Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Zeldudes Podcast. I'm ZM, and I'm joined with my co-host Zeltic.
And today we're discussing the latest and in some ways the greatest Zelda game to date, Tears of the Kingdom. As of the time this episode comes out, it's been close to 6 months since the game's launch, a game that Luke and myself have been following the development of ever since its announcement all the way back in 2019. So let's start this discussion all the way back at the beginning, back at E3 2019. Luke, take me back there. What was your initial reaction to the announcement of the Breath of the Wild sequel?
It was something like I feel like we've never seen before. See, one thing, we barely get direct sequels to a Zelda game, and then to get it to Breath of the Wild, which was Nintendo's, reboot of the Zelda series. Like, we're gonna continue that fresh new take of Hyrule, of Zelda. It was so magical, and then it just got me so excited seeing the dark depths they were exploring. I mean, I guess we didn't know it was the depths at the time, but it was underneath Hyrule Castle. And then finding Ganondorf's body, a character that was kind of neglected in Breath of the Wild, to be like, no, we didn't forget about him. Calamity Ganon isn't it. We got the true Ganondorf waiting. Yeah, my mind went everywhere. Like, I thought this was going to truly be the darkest Zelda game, and that it was going to be something so special. Of course, it didn't really amount to that, but we'll get into that. What about you? How did you feel when you first saw the trailer?
Well, I mean, it's the same. It was just completely left field, so crazy, because at the time, I was at E3 that year.
I was with you. We were both there.
yeah, of course. But I remember going there specifically for Link's Awakening, which was on the horizon at the time. And obviously we woke up LA time, which is very different to what I'm used to, and started watching the Nintendo presentation really quite early in the morning. We planned to watch the presentation, then go to the E3 show floor, play some Link's Awakening, and kind of chill out. No one expected Breath of the Wild sequel announcement at the end of the trailer, so
right, especially after that Smash announcement. Like, we already had Banjo-Kazooie,
of course.
Yep. So it was a crazy way to end off that direct, and it definitely threw that day in a spiral. Like, we didn't even. I don't even think we went to the show floor that day, right? We were all just obsessing over Tears of the Kingdom, or at the time, the sequel, as it was called.
All cooped up in hot LA apartments,
trying to make a video,
writing analysis scripts, and so it was a pretty crazy time. But like you said, that it was just such a stark contrast from the way Breath of the Wild was announced, where it opened with a wide shot of Hyrule in the bright sunlight. Which obviously fits for Breath of the Wild, where the game is completely about, the open world and the environment. And then to go from that to this dark cave network with a resurrected mummy Ganondorf it was so different. And at the time, it felt like they were going for such a drastically different tone with Breath of the Wild 2, as we knew it then, than with the first game. I still think that announcement trailer is probably one of the best trailers I've 100%. Seen for any game. Because it's only about a minute long, but it doesn't need to be any longer. It's so creepy, it's so mysterious, and honestly, it's just so intriguing. That back then, when we didn't know anything, we saw the Zonai ruins down there for the first time, and the caves full of luminous stones, Link and Zelda traveling together with their beast of burden. Just everything about that trailer was so perfect.
Yep. Yeah, it was a direction Zelda never went with. Like, they always start from Link's beginning, a new story being told. Yeah, again, Majora's Mask was the closest thing we got to that, but it was never like a truly direct sequel. Like, Majora's Mask takes Ocarina of Time and then reimagines it in its own world. It doesn't even harken back to anything Ocarina of Time did or had. The closest thing we got was when Link relearns the Ocarina of when he picks up the Ocarina and relearns the Song of Time. that's like the only callback we have to Ocarina of Time. But like, there's no other mention in the game to Ocarina of Time. But like, this was a game that is straight up piggybacking off of its, you know, the last game. It's the same characters. They're you know, just a little bit older. It was crazy to see Zelda go that direction because we never get that kind of thing from the Zelda series. And it's a shame, though, it didn't live up to that. Because let's be honest, like, the way you imagine the game in your head was so much more grand and so much more darker and different and ominous than what the game ended up being. And I do believe, like, in developer interviews, I'm not entirely sure, I think it was lost in translation, like, that the game was going to be the darkest game ever. Well, it technically is, you know, because the depths is the darkest.
The depths
gameplay.
are pretty dark,
We thought it meant story-wise, like, it was gonna be so messed up, so dark, but like, it's more like Breath of the Wild. If anything, Breath of the Wild's kind of darker because literally the kingdom crumbles and all the champions die. But
I think you're right. I think that quote was mistranslated or taken out of context somehow. I know that wasn't the right meaning behind that. But regardless of what the game itself was like at that point in time, showing that as the first thing that you released to the world of this game, it sent a message of kind of where their headspace was at with this story. Because there would have been a conscious thought that, you know, the opening of that game is such a striking moment with the resurrection of Ganondorf, sorry, and it will have been something that they discussed internally, because they will have known just what an impact a trailer like that would have had. And I can't think of a way that could have been more effective, more intriguing, or got anyone more excited for this game. Because a sequel to Breath of the Wild was always going to overshadow anything else that they showed that E3. Even when we had, you know, Link's Awakening coming out, we had Banjo-Kazooie confirmed for Smash Bros, like you said. A sequel to Breath of the Wild would always have completely outshadowed that. But I don't think not in the way that this trailer did. I think this was something special because there's something so sinister about this trailer. The way the music is, the way there's all these voices that you can half hear, like whispers in the background, and it's kind of unlike anything we've really seen in Zelda before or since.
100%.
So that's trailer 1, which is drastically different to the next time we got a proper look at Tears of the Kingdom, which was 2 years later at E3 2021. What do you think of that one? How do you think that compared to the first trailer?
It definitely like changed my perspective on what I thought the game would be like, because it felt like they were going a completely different direction. They went up, you know, instead of down. We got the sky instead. But my excitement only went up as well, because I immediately started thinking of Skyward Sword and the similarities and how maybe this would be the true Skyward Sword Nintendo wanted to give us. Because, of course, Skyward Sword was very limited with... we only had Skyloft, you know, in the sky, and there was the whole loading screen, and it was so linear, you know, the surface had very little to do. It was just like a long tunnel that takes you to each temple, and that's it. That's all it had to offer. So, like, knowing, so they're going to reuse Hyrule, but they're going to give us a new world in the sky, and it's going to probably be just as dense and massive and detailed as Hyrule. Again, sadly, expectations were way too high to what the game actually gave us, but it had me really excited, and I don't think it took away from me thinking it would still be dark, because I thought, you know, at the end of the day, the core game is going to require, it can't all be dark, you know? Sure, there'll be dark moments, but I wasn't expecting the entire thing to be, like, just underground or like that. So that had to be like the beginning cutscene. I thought that cutscene would have happened maybe in the first hour of the game. I didn't think the first trailer was supposed to be the actual start of the game. Like, in my head was so fixated on the idea of we're gonna go to Zora's Domain and we're gonna try to fix a divine beast, or we're gonna like, why did Zelda say that at the end of Breath of the Wild? I just thought there was
it's a strange
meaning,
one,
right? I felt like there had to be meaning. Nintendo's not done with their story. We're gonna continue that, but Well, what about you? How did you feel seeing that second trailer?
Well, absolutely loved it. The moment after it opens, obviously, with different shots of the main three characters, all underground during the opening cutscene, of course, and then it goes to white, and then it opens up, and it's Link,
that Skyward Sword vibe,
dropping down,
free falling,
and I my jaw just dropped. It was. Yeah, no one expected that because, again, everyone was thinking, based on the previous trailer, that it would be Breath of the Wild's world, but expanded below. That was the kind of general theory at the time, was kind of they'd have cave networks and everything like that. Because at the time, we did know that the plan was to reuse Breath of the Wild's world. We'd had interviews with various developers saying that, the whole reason they wanted to do DLC, they wanted to do a sequel, was that they started on DLC and had too many ideas, so thought, let's just, turn this into something truly massive. So we did know at the time that it was going to reuse the world, but no one at the time thought that they were going to go above it as well as below. But yeah, it's quite wild, really, how drastically different the first and second trailers we got for this game are. And it's quite fitting, really, for Tears of the Kingdom, which has this whole heaven and hell parallel with the depths below and the Sky Islands above. That you got the first trailer, which is so nightmarish and haunting, and then you go straight from that into this bombastic E3 2021 trailer where it shows the Sky Islands properly. It's the first time we heard the Tears of the Kingdom main theme. The kind of dichotomy between those trailers is really something. But absolutely loved it, and I think it really gave a proper impression of the kind of game we could expect, because that's the game we got, was returning to Hyrule. Like in the second trailer, we saw Link taking on a stone talus, but different, with a platform full of bokoblins on its back. And it really highlighted that this is Breath of the Wild, but kind of remixed and expanded.
Elevated.
In a way, elevated, quite literally, yeah. Which, is brilliant. We saw some of Link's arm abilities for the first time. We saw him use Recall, obviously Ascend at the very end of the trailer. Interestingly, he uses Ascend in a group of Sky Islands that didn't make it into the final game.
Didn't make it, yep.
No, which was quite disappointing. Because I know they've said in interviews a few times that they had more Sky Islands initially, but then they thought it made the sky itself look too cluttered or something along those lines.
It already looks dumb. It looks like a Mario. It looks like the Super Mario movie, when you just see like all
right,
of those
when they
islands.
spawn the platform. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me. It always looks like that, so that's a horrible excuse. They should have kept them in.
Yeah, because there was quite a massive chunk of quite large Sky Islands, and it was somewhere over kind of Tabantha sort of area, kind of.
Yeah,
like
looking
the
down
west,
at Hyrule like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like the west of kind of Hyrule Field. So that was a real shame that those islands didn't make it through, because we'll get to our various compliments and criticisms of the game later, but a big one for many people is that the Great Sky Island is obviously is very
all
good.
It has to offer. Yeah, that's like the Sky Island.
That's all. But that's all. Yeah. But anyway, so we went from the extreme high of the E3 2021 trailer, and the next time we saw the game was unfortunately a massive low, where they announced that they would be delaying the game from 2022. They pushed it back out of that year, which we now know was mainly due to the Zonai devices. According to Aonuma, the reason they delayed it was literally so that they could work on the building system more and make sure that was completely flawless. Which, that's the way Nintendo approaches their development, especially for games like Zelda. They delayed Breath of the Wild multiple times, and at least one of those delays was because of the physics system. But one thing we did get to see in the delay announcement trailer was the broken Master Sword for the first time, which was quite a big moment. We've never seen the Master Sword in a condition like that. What was your reaction when you saw that?
So, my reaction, honestly, again, sadly, I ended up hyping myself up way more than what the game delivered, because the game, you don't really do much with the Master Sword when it comes to, actually restoring it. But I thought that each temple, Link would slowly restore the Master Sword, and that was the end of one of the temples. Like, Link just defeated a boss, and he was, using recall to restore the Master Sword. Because we could see the symbol, and it was the same symbol that Link used in the previous trailer with recall, and like the same color and everything. I remember believing that maybe this will be like Link bringing the Master Sword back in time. I mean, technically he did do that in the game, and that's probably why we saw it. I thought it was going to be like each temple you complete, the Master Sword is slowly restoring its power. It gets slightly stronger and stronger, and it starts off as a chewed up sword, but eventually it will be back to its original blade. It was a nice little scene, especially when we're so desperate for anything new that the game has to offer. I was like, I'll take it, even if it's a 3-second scene of just Link grabbing the sword and putting it on his back or pulling it out, whatever it was. It's like,
when you're something that starved of Zelda, anything Zelda, we'll take, like you said, 3 extra seconds of Link waving around a broken Master Sword. We're eating good for weeks on that. That's great. But yeah, it wasn't too long though after that. Then we saw a more substantial look at the game in a much more complete state. In September, we got official trailer 1, so called because that was when we got the game's
finally
name
got the
for
title.
the first time.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah. So it wasn't the longest trailer. It showed off, a few more things that we knew were in the game and a few that we didn't, like the wing for the first time. It showed that you could recall rocks to get into the sky. Notably, though, it did begin with shots of the mural room near the imprisoning chamber, which at the time was this incredible mystery. Because, we knew nothing of what these characters were, who they were, what the murals were.
We didn't know there was Zona yet. Like, we thought
we didn't know there was Zona.
Yeah, like a goddess of Hylia that looked somewhat like an animal. Like, you couldn't tell exactly what you were looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was Hylia. I was very, very convinced that the main character on the murals was Hylia. I had a whole idea that because this character was making a circle with a character that looked a lot like Zelda, combined with the Ouroboros in the game's logo, I thought we'd see some connection between Zelda and her divine self. But we now know that is Roru, which is something, again, that no one saw coming, which we'll get to later. But yeah, then after this point, after September 2022 is when things really started cooking with Tears of the Kingdom. So we didn't have to wait long until February when we got trailer 2, which was a much bigger look at the game. We saw the depths for the first time. We heard Ganondorf's voice, and we got a much better feel for what this game was going to be back in February. And then, at that point, we were off to the races. We had February, we had Aonuma's gameplay demonstration of the game in March, and then, of course, we had Trailer 3 in April 2023. So tell me about Trailer 3.
At that point, I feel like we knew what to expect from the game, but still we were wrong. I mean, the game had more to deliver than what we thought, but I think by then, we had an idea of what the temples would be like, because we saw that glimpse of Sidon and Riju, and Tulin. Actually, the most we saw was Tulin accompanying Link, with the sky, and so by then I felt like we had an idea of the gameplay, but okay, the biggest issue, and this is my biggest issue with these trailers, especially that one, is, we see Zelda, we see Ganondorf, we truly know that's Ganondorf by then, and we we're tricked again, just like what they did with Breath of the Wild. We see all these cutscenes. We're gonna witness this in the game. We're gonna see everything, and then comes out they're all just memories. Those are all clips that were used from memories that you don't actually see, you don't witness. You're in the middle of just exploring a world. You find a geoglyph from the sky, and when you pick it up, then you're supposed to get into that hype, get into that perspective of what the memory is. But it's like I need build up. I need to see what happened before that. I need to get to that point of the game. The memories to me is the biggest issue with the game, and it's like sadly, the trailer once again misled us. We were deceived. What about you? But the music though made up for everything. Too bad we didn't hear that. That saxophone bit. Like, what? I wish that. Why was that not in the game? Like, how's that not in the game? That sucks.
Well, it was the equivalent of the Nintendo Switch presentation trailer that we got for Breath of the Wild. Just
but
this
I feel like
unbelievably
that ended up in the game, right? Didn't it? That's like Daruk's theme mixed with right? I feel like Daruk's theme was the presentation.
The Switch presentation trailer music never made it into Breath of the Wild. It made it into Smash Bros. It was kind of an extended mix of it. Ended up in Smash Bros. Ultimate, which was good. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, we still haven't even got a clean copy of the audio anywhere on the internet, let alone in the game itself. Which is such a shame, because it's one of the best Zelda songs ever, that trailer music. Like you said, the saxophone.
And it actually has parts of the original Zelda theme in it. So it's like, it's so perfect. Like, it's a shame it was in the game.
Exactly. When it shows the logo of Tears of the Kingdom for the first time, and at the end of the track, you get the main Zelda theme coming in. It's just incredible. But I mean, we can talk about the memories. You mentioned them. I think why not? This is as good a segue as any. So trailer 3 obviously is an incredible watch. You can't watch that today and not get excited for a game that came out 6 months ago. It's that good of a trailer. But like you said, everything we see in that trailer, or most of the things we see in that trailer, we don't experience in the game. We're not a part of those events. Like Breath of the Wild, a lot of the story happens in the distant past, long time before Link's Adventure. So the way that we interact with the main story of Tears of the Kingdom is again through memories. You mentioned the geoglyphs, which are where Zelda's dragon's tears fell. And that's how we unlock Zelda's story and solve the mystery of where Princess Zelda went. Which is the same way they did things in Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom in many ways is a super Breath of the Wild. They doubled down on everything, absolutely
the good
everything
and
about
the
that
bad.
Game. The good and the bad. And I think, unfortunately, the memories are one of the bad parts of Tears of the Kingdom. I think one of the main problems I have with the memory system and how it's done in Tears of the Kingdom is it really matters what you unlock, the story that you uncover through the geoglyphs is very important because it's a mystery. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, the game starts, Hyrule has fallen, Ganon's done it, Link has awoken from a place called the Shrine of Resurrection. You're given all of the puzzle pieces at the very start. You know what has happened to Hyrule, you just need to find out how. Whereas, so when you uncover the memories, it doesn't matter what order you uncover them in, you're uncovering little pieces of Link's
past
story in the past. And they're not necessary to understand the game and understand the stakes. Whereas uncovering Zelda's story is very, very much important, very essential to understanding what you're doing, and the core story of the game all revolves around those memories and finding out what happened to Zelda. The problem is, though, that you can find them in any order, meaning it's more than possible that you'll spoil yourself on some of the story's main twists. Breath of the Wild had no twists because we already knew what had happened. Going into Tears of the Kingdom, absolutely no one predicted Zelda's story. No one thought that Zelda would go to the past and turn into the Light Dragon and exist all the way till the present day. But if you see the wrong memory at the wrong time, then you can figure that out before you've seen any of the setup, before you understand what that sacrifice means. And I think it's a big problem with the game that you can undermine its central storytelling by playing the game normally. You don't have to go out of your way to do it. You can just stumble upon the wrong geoglyph at the wrong time, which in a game that says you can go anywhere at any time and do whatever you want.
It happens to everyone. Yeah, there's no way you're going to follow it. Yep.
Exactly. And obviously in the Forgotten Temple, there is a series of carvings on the walls that highlights the right order, but
you're not gonna be like, oh, I see a geoglyph, let me save it for later because it's not in order. Like, you're gonna go get it. You want to complete it. Yeah.
Which is one of my major gripes with the geoglyphs. But yeah, what are your opinions on it? How do you think the memory system worked?
So I do think it definitely evolved the way you find them. Again, you know, with the sky being the new component within the game, being able to find them through the sky, I thought it's definitely clever, like the idea, because even though I had more fun finding them in Breath of the Wild, being like, okay, so this is a photo that Zelda took in the past, I gotta relocate that exact, you know, landscape shot of where it is, stand on that ground. That was so cool. And, you know, the geoglyphs was kind of like a step above, literally. You got to see it through the thing, but it was a lot easier. It took away the challenge because they're so easy to spot. So sadly, even locating them became a lot easier. But then, having the story, especially with a story that contains a plot twist, like Breath of the Wild had no plot twists in the memories. You knew exactly what was going to happen, even down to the final memory, which was saved until the very end. But like seeing Ganondorf, and especially if you like, let's say you watch it from when Ganondorf has already betrayed Hyrule, he murdered Sonia, then it's like, you're gonna see the Sonia ones and you're gonna be like, what? You already know. It's like it's so lackluster. It cannot be done that way. Honestly, I feel like a good way Nintendo could have remedied that was like, if no matter what geoglyph you find, it forces you to watch them in order. So if you found one, it doesn't matter which one you found, which one you're standing on. It's gonna go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and so on. I feel like that would have probably fixed it, but obviously it would have made sense with, you know, the different shapes and drawings that are supposed to be, you know, with the geoglyphs. That would have destroyed that aspect, of course. But
that's true.
Yeah, but again, I think that is less important than the way you should consume the story. That's, you know, you should actually get it in a linear fashion, again, because the story is so heavy. But yeah, just my biggest gripe with it is just the fact that we don't get to witness any of these moments. Again, they're all memories, and each memory is like a minute, 2 minutes long. Like, they're very short, small, and not much actually goes on. Like, I believe like the first 3 memories are so just nothing burgers. They're just like, you know what I'm saying, nothing happens. It's nice to get to know the characters a bit more, but it's like, why couldn't I have like got to know them properly? Like, Link should have been able to if we can't play as Zelda, and we'll get into that as well, Link should have been able to travel back in time himself and witness them. I don't like the way Nintendo's doing it, but I understand, because it really seems like with these games, Nintendo doesn't think the stories is as important anymore, and they want players just to enjoy the game. It's all about the game. So they feel like they don't even want to force. If you don't even have to come across like memory. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people who beat the game and didn't even do all the memories. They didn't bother with it. So it's like that sense of freedom. Well, it is nice, and it does give you limitless possibilities and different ways to play the game. There's a lot of good in it. It takes away from the people who want substance, who want a reason. You know, it's like, story is a huge reason why you continue playing the game. You know, being left on the edge of your seat and wanting to know what's next is a way to entice the player to keep playing. Just having them play for the sake of like, oh, I can do what I want, is not enough. Again, for certain players, I'm sure it varies, but I feel like a core Zelda fan, like a true Zelda fan, the story is a huge part. Like, that's what got us into the games. It was, you know, the games were more than just an open world to do what you want. They never were like this. But yeah, it seems like Nintendo sadly again doubled down on that decision, and sadly, just as it was an issue in Breath of the Wild, it became an even bigger issue in Tears of the Kingdom.
Exactly, I completely agree, and it's interesting what you said about a possible solution being locking the memories you find to a sequence, as in you could only find what regardless of what geoglyph you encounter, it'll play the next memory in the sequence. Which that would solve things like spoiling yourself on the draconification twist. However, it still doesn't address some other problems that the memory system introduces to Tears of the Kingdom that Breath of the Wild didn't suffer from. A big one being the central mystery of Tears of the Kingdom is what happened to Princess Zelda. Understanding that she went to the past and following her journey is the main story is figuring that out. And unlike Breath of the Wild, where Link is an amnesiac, and like Link, the player also learns alongside him about what's going on in the world.
It's a great way to get the player to feel like they're Link. That is well done in that sense. Yeah.
It's really well done, and everyone else understands what's happened to Hyrule, and most people that were alive at the time are now no longer alive, and there's this new generation of people in this new strange world that Link doesn't understand. So uncovering Link's memories is fine. There's no fundamental breaks in the storytelling with that. But with Tears of the Kingdom, because everyone in the world, not just Link, is trying to solve this mystery of what happened to Princess Zelda, the fact that then Link can learn what happened through the memories, but characters in the world don't react to the things Link learns, is a massive problem. For instance, Ganondorf returns, he's resurrected, and one of his main plans is to use a puppet of Zelda to manipulate the kingdom and cause distress. Which is something he did in the past, and you discover that in the memory near Lurelin Village. You discover that Ganondorf has this ability to create a puppet Zelda, and he's used that in the past to manipulate things and try and get his way. You can discover that memory and then go to Pura at Lookout Landing
and have to play stupid with every character. Exactly. Like, I don't know what's going on. That was so frustrating. Which, I agree.
Even if you lock the memories to the right sequence, that would still happen.
Yep.
So you either have to assume that Link is just really stupid and he hasn't picked up on clues.
That.
Or that he's kind of withholding information for no reason. So that is a really kind of a bad problem with how Tears of the Kingdom's story gels with its open and limitless possibility format. It really doesn't work with the style of story that they try to introduce in this game. A story that you can interact with in any order, which is the open air format, doesn't work if the story is built around a mystery like what happened to Princess Zelda.
I feel like even outside the memories, even with each sage, like by Yunobo, you confirm that's not Zelda. They know 100%. Oh, ever since I wore the mask, I wasn't myself. The blonde lady is not her. That's not her anymore yet. Still, you have to go to the next stage and then play stupid. Like, oh, who's that? And then chase her around and then realize, oh, it can't be Zelda. It's like it's recycled and recycled the same kind of thing. Yeah.
So Link can go to a geoglyph, learn about this puppet Zelda that was manipulating the distant past, then go to Kakariko Village and try and access the floating ring ruin, and someone says, nah, you can't go there. Look, Zelda turned up, she said you couldn't go there. By the way, she was a bit weird. She had nothing going on behind her eyes. She looked a bit like a doll. And Link thinks, yeah, sounds reasonable.
Right?
No, that doesn't make any sense. You get this weird situation where, again, either Link's stupid or the player is just far ahead of where Link is, which kind of makes you feel disconnected from the game's story in quite a jarring way. It feels like when Link interacts with the geoglyphs, only the player is experiencing the memory because Link doesn't change. He doesn't have any other dialogue options based on the things that he uncovers through the geoglyphs.
It's like when watching a horror movie and you already know the plot twist and the villain. They show it to the audience first, but then you have to watch the main character stumble and do all the stupid. It's literally like that, and those are always the worst. And it's sad to get that in a Zelda game.
Yeah, like with mystery films, like you said, with horror films or films with a mystery, you should be at the same point that the protagonist is.
Exactly.
You should know as much about the mystery as the main character. You should solve it alongside them. Whereas Tears of the Kingdom feels like you solve the mystery far before Link and far before any other character. Which ends with it kind of feeling a little bit silly and a little bit trivial, which it shouldn't be, because I think on paper the story of Tears of the Kingdom really is quite cool. I do love the idea of them discovering the truth behind the calamity, Zelda being transported to the distant past, and then kind of setting up Link's adventure that will then take place thousands of years later. Ganon returning and using a phantom Zelda to manipulate the present. On paper, the things that happen in Tears of the Kingdom are really cool. I think it's just the way it gels with the open air format. It just doesn't click. And the way that you can interact with the story at any time just kind of breaks it, which is really unfortunate.
Yep. It's not a convenience to the player. Even though Nintendo thought it would be, it just takes away from the story, sadly.
Yeah.
It makes it way less engaging.
Exactly, and I think compared to Breath of the Wild, which, the story was done through memories, and a lot of people felt kind of betrayed by the final Breath of the Wild trailer too.
It just made more sense, though. Again, because Link was suffering amnesia, he was it just made sense. Why am I getting Zelda's visions through a memory? That makes no sense. That's not well done. That just, to me, seems like a cop-out to once again hide the memories, or hide the main bulk of the story behind memories, and through just like random areas you can just locate them and view them. You know, it shouldn't be like that. We should have had true build-up like every other Zelda game before Breath of the Wild. Yeah,
it felt like the memory system wasn't necessary this time around, but for the sake of it being a super Breath of the Wild, they felt that was the way they were going to do the story. Because absolutely everything about Tears of the Kingdom is the exact same as Breath of the Wild, just expanded or improved in some way. There's certain things that they reintroduced from Breath of the Wild, but like the memory system, that just doesn't gel well with the sequel. Which, like you said, it is a shame. Because Breath of the Wild had the memory system, and that was the core kind of emotional story, is figuring out, Link and Zelda's relationship in the past, or the story of the champions, everything like that. But then you had Hyrule itself, which told its own story. You could go to the ruins of Akala Citadel or Fort Hateno and just kind of piece together things about the story of this world just by the way the ruins are laid out. And Tears of the Kingdom doesn't have any of that, because none of the Zonai ruins tell a story about what happened there.
And there's no connection. The Zonai, that history, those memories you're witnessing are tens of thousands of years, more than tens of thousands of years. The Great Calamity was 10,000 years, the first one. So it's like you are going so far back in the past. But in Breath of the Wild, it's only 100 years, which again, 100 years is a lot, but you're able to see remnants of what survived throughout the 100 years. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense when you visit the landscape and you see the trees haven't even changed one bit. Over 100 years, something should have happened. But again, it's just a lot better because you feel like there's a connection. But when you discover them through Tears of the Kingdom, there is no connection to those memories. They are the landscape is supposed to be completely different. Hyrule's supposed to have changed so much. You feel nothing between the present and the past. They are just separate worlds entirely.
Yeah. So the memory system aside, and the way Tears of the Kingdom tells its story aside, what are your opinions on the story itself? Do you think on paper it's a story you click with, or would you have made some changes to it? How do you feel about that?
I feel like it's one of the weakest Zelda stories, I'll be honest, but and I feel like this is the problem with a lot of fans, and not necessarily a problem, but this is a lot of fans kind of end up thinking too when they think of Tears of the Kingdom story. They end up thinking it's really good because of one thing, and that is the final memory. When you finally get that final memory, it is so impactful, and it is good. It's such a good plot twist. It gives you everything you wanted that you didn't get from every other memory, that you kind of change your perspective on the game, and you're like, oh no, this was good. This has a really good story. And I feel like, yeah, so the story itself, I feel like is very weak, but like what they do at the end, kinda, I don't say it makes up for it, but it definitely helps. It helps a lot and really makes it nice. You know, that final memory of Zelda turning into a dragon, you know, seeing her consume it. It's
great.
It's so, like, the first time I saw it, I'm not lying, it's like I went to bed just in shock. Like it couldn't escape my mind. I'm just like, wow, Nintendo went there. Like Zelda had to endure this. Zelda's been alive forever. It just like, it left such a mark on me. It was so impactful, and I never felt this way throughout Breath of the Wild and anything else throughout Tears of the Kingdom. It never hit me this hard. So it was definitely the biggest like story change, and it was the one thing I want to talk about the most with other people. Of course, it being a spoiler, I had to refrain myself, but I mean, now we can. So yeah, that moment was so special, seeing Zelda endure that, knowing that finally Zelda, she became a legend. The Legend of Zelda makes sense. Seeing her a dragon. Yep. The first person you see, it's so crazy because like when you speak to the construct steward that is at the beginning of the game that gives you the Sheikah Slate, it's like, it says find Zelda. That's like the quest line, and then right in front of you where the Temple of Time is, the Zelda's there. Yeah, so it's like, wow, Nintendo put it in your face, but they knew you wouldn't get it until you played it, and that is so that's so cool. Like that was amazing.
It's brilliant.
Yeah,
it's a really creative thing that they did with the character there, because the sheer amount of discussion and theories about this game, it says something that no one predicted. That I don't think I saw a single person suggest.
Yeah, that Zelda's gonna be the dragon of life.
Becomes exactly, which is just incredible. And like you said, you know, it's one of the most emotional moments in the series. It really is fantastic. Because I think with Tears of the Kingdom, the reason it's kind of so divisive, for want of a better word, is that it has some of the lowest lows of the series, but it also has some of the highest highs. When Tears of the Kingdom does things right, it is just absolutely unbelievable. Like, there are things like the game's soundtrack, which I think might be my favorite soundtrack out of any of the games. It's still a bit fresh. I need to mull over that one.
It's an improvement from Breath of the Wild, I agree, but I still don't. It still doesn't have enough upbeat music to outbeat like Skyward Sword or Twilight Princess. But that's my opinion.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe we'll come on to music in a little bit then. But I think Tears of the Kingdom is such a mixed bag, because it is, you know, such this mix of highs and lows. And the story really does represent that better than anything else, I think. Like, we've already talked about the way the story is integrated in the game itself, which we both agree is kind of a massive low. I personally, like I've already said, I love the story on paper. I think it is a really interesting thing, a really interesting concept for the whole cyclical narrative of Zelda kind of writing her own destiny by going back in time, and then it's already immortalized on the murals at the start of the game before she even goes back. Love it. I think that's fantastic.
But it creates so many plot holes, it makes no sense. So you're telling me in Breath of the Wild, Zelda was trying to discover her meaning and everything. There was a dragon above the clouds flying that was also her. And what if Link threw a bomb on the rocks that were blocking the mural? What if Zelda made a paradox by discovering that that's what's going to happen to her? And what if she didn't do it? And it makes no sense, though. Let's be real. Time travel is a...
exactly. That's
an issue with anything. It creates a lot of paradoxes.
That doesn't bother me too much. I think that the problems that come from having this time loop, they don't bother me because it is inherently a paradox. And that's the point.
And
it's like
anything with time travel, Yeah, you gotta go with that mindset. If there's time travel, you gotta think outside the box. You can't want a literal explanation for everything. There's gonna be sadly plot holes, and that's just a risk you take when doing time travel in any kind of fictional media. So, yeah, 100%.
Exactly, because I've seen some people justify it by claiming that when Zelda went back, she created a split or kind of altered the
Then
the
how does it
future
go
and-
back to that version? How does Link rediscover her if it's a split? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Ending?
I personally don't buy that. I think the point is that it's meant to be this bootstrap paradox, like the Song of Storms. It goes around and around like the game's logo. I think that is the point of the murals being present at the start of the game but obscured, so that at the very end you go back, you blow up the murals, and you see that it was all kind of already literally written in stone from the very beginning. So I don't really buy the idea that Zelda changed things by going back. I think it is all meant to be one loop.
It was bound to happen, yep.
It was bound to happen, which, does kind of, create no end of plot holes, but those aren't plot holes that bother me. I think things related to the time loop, you've got to take them on the chin. They're things that just come with a story like that. The plot holes that do bother me are things that don't make sense regardless of the time loop. Things like immediately after Ganondorf's resurrection, Zelda takes the Secret Stone, she goes to the past. Link is caught by Roru's spirit arm, who then pulls him up, and then he wakes up on the Great Sky Island. Fine. Then you meet Roru's spirit, who claims that he wasn't aware that the Great Sky Island was in the sky. He says, "In my day, this was on the ground. I wonder what's happened in the ages since." How does he know where to take Link then when he catches his arm?
True.
How does he know to take him to the sky?
We're supposed to interpret he maybe teleported him to where where he can rest, and in his mind it was still underground or still on the ground, and apparently now it's in the sky. Yeah, you're right. That's Nintendo just being like, you figure it out. Just figure it out, dude. That's Nintendo's mindset.
But that wasn't the case with Breath of the Wild. Link wakes up in the Shrine of Resurrection. It's very clear why he's there. We know how he got there. We've even got creating a champion that kind of plots out the exact route that Link and the Sheikah who took him there took.
That's so cool.
To get to, which, is just something that isn't present in Tears of the Kingdom. There's not that level of depth to the story that we had with Breath of the Wild, which is unfortunate. It's the beauty of Breath of the Wild story was that when Breath of the Wild came out, I'll say this now, it's a little bit controversial. When the game actually. Forget that, it's not controversial at all. When the game came out, I didn't like the story. I thought, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, based on the trailers and based on how much I'd kind of built it up in my head. And it wasn't till I played through the game a few more times and really started thinking about it that it started to make more sense, and I kind of fell in love with this version of Hyrule and this world. Because with Breath of the Wild's world, the more you think about it, the more things make sense. Which is obviously good, but then with Tears of the Kingdom it has the opposite. So the more you think about things in Tears of the Kingdom, the less sense they make, which is a problem. For instance, Minoru, we know in the distant past her plan was to join Zelda all the way until the future. So she separates her spirit from her body, enters the Pura Pad, which is then stored in a construct, taken to the Great Sky Island, and it waits there till Link wakes up. Why doesn't she knows everything about Zelda's story. She knows her whereabouts. The whole point of her entering the Pura Pad was that she could guide Link in the present day.
Yep.
Why then does she lay dormant until Link goes to the Spirit Temple to rebuild a construct that was never previously mentioned as being part of her plan? The whole thing seems so disjointed, which some things do in Breath of the Wild story, but with them, the more you think about them, the more kind of you can make sense of the problems that seem to be present in that story.
It just seemed like the developers, it seemed like the developers were really trying to iron out all the details with Breath of the Wild and really make it a full, complete story. But it seems like with Tears of the Kingdom, they're just like, fuck it, just more Zelda, we'll go with it. It definitely seems like now they don't care. I mean, even confirmed in the Famitsu interview, the most recent one with Fujibayashi and Aonuma, that he straight up says, figure it out. Like, it's just like, you interpret it your way. Like, so they don't care anymore. And I think they just realized, if we want to make these games as big as they are and explore all of these ideas, we can't limit ourselves to what will be canonical, what won't be, what will make sense, what won't have plot holes. We just need to roll with it, and hopefully fans will take it as is and interpret their own, conclusions and reasoning for everything. Which it does suck for people like us who are so obsessed with the series and we want a real answer to everything. But I think nowadays, Nintendo's just looking at it as it's mainly about the game and having fun and containing it in its own universe and just rolling with it, and we don't want to think too much deeper about it. And well, again, that takes away from the story and making it more meaningful. It's I guess just a safer way to do things and for them to explore as many ideas as they can without limiting themselves. It feels like Nintendo has changed, specifically with the Zelda series. They're not doing what they used to do, where it was like you could sit and dissect the smallest little thing and really find true meaning behind it. Now it's like you might just be wasting your time,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some truth to that, but I also think that maybe Tears of the Kingdom exposed a weakness in the way they tell Zelda stories that wasn't really apparent before, just because it's a sequel. Every other game, including direct sequels like Ocarina of Time to Majora's Mask, every other game was largely independent of one another. It was set in a different world or a vastly different time, with a different set of characters and a different history and what have you. Tears of the Kingdom is the first game of its type where it is absolutely directly after the previous game, set in the same world. We've never had something like that. The closest probably being A Link Between Worlds, but even that, it doesn't rely too much on the story of A Link to the Past. Sorry, it tells its own thing. I think it exposed a problem in the Zelda storytelling format, because it was forced to answer the questions that Breath of the Wild asked. Because the way Zelda storytelling often works is, like you mentioned, like Fujibayashi said in the interview, is to create all these mysteries, to design a dungeon in a particular way that makes the player think, and that makes the player come up with their own interpretations of what the history of this place might be. Which is why I think Zelda theorizing and discussing the Zelda series is so enjoyable, because they're designed in a way to make you think and make you ask questions about things. But never before have we had a game directly following one of these mystery boxes, then forced to answer the mysteries that were raised in the previous one. Because
and they still didn't. Like with the Sheikah, they were just like, they left.
It's clearly something that they either can't do or aren't interested in doing, because it would be a considerable time investment. You'd have to have a whole kind of
and it limits them,
law department. Because the mysteries in Twilight Princess, say Snow Peak Ruins, Snow Peak Mansion, amazing. It's one of everyone's favorite Zelda dungeons. Such a incredible atmosphere. There's this overarching mystery of what this place was, and you can kind of piece together little things about it, but you can never see the whole picture. If then there was a Twilight Princess 2 forced to kind of return to that and answer the mystery they'd written about Snow Peak, I think it would be incredibly unsatisfying. I think it would be nowhere near as interesting as the ideas that players come up with by themselves. So I think by doing such a direct sequel with Tears of the Kingdom, they kind of shot themselves in the foot in the storytelling department, because they were forced to return to mysteries they'd written in the previous game, like, say, the eighth heroine, which was one of the biggest mysteries in Breath of the Wild's world. It was clearly set up as a mystery. It had a little bit of depth to it, that there were 7 statues of these Gerudo heroines in the desert. all standing together, kind of crumbling into the sand a bit. And then there's an eighth one, miles away, with its sword strewn on a mountaintop. It's such a brilliant mystery, and you can see there's Gerudo text on the side of these statues, and it translates to the 7 sages. So then people wonder, what's this 8th heroine about? If they're the 7 sages, then what's happening with the 8th? And then they were forced to return to this in Tears of the Kingdom, and we did get an answer. They implied that the 8th heroine was a man who had helped the Gerudo with something in the past, and the reason the 8th heroine is so distant from the others is because of the Gerudo's view of male and female, and they couldn't honor a man in the same way that they could the 7 women. Which there's a little bit of intrigue about that. It's kind of subtly implied that perhaps that was a previous incarnation of Link, but it's just so much less interesting than the mystery of the 7 heroines was. Yeah. I think by answering the mystery, it loses all magic that it had. But what do you think about that in terms of the mysteries of the world and how they were answered in Tears of the Kingdom?
No, I agree 100%. I think one of the biggest aspects in Zelda being the kind of wondrous, magical world that we all look at it is the fact that there are so many unanswered mysteries. And if you do have the answer to everything, it would take away from that charm, from that, wonder you have through the series. And 100%, I feel like that is Nintendo's way of thinking to begin with. They want a lot of things just to be left up to like each individual's interpretation of the game. They don't want to just like spell everything out for you, because if that was the case, then where's the wonder? Where's the mystery? You know what I'm saying? So and I get it, and I'm fine with that. I'm 100%. I'm someone who prefers just to theorize and to not really get an answer. But again, sadly, Tears of the Kingdom had way too many plot holes that I was just like, really? But so it was a bit different than how Zelda normally does it, but because usually there'd be just like a few mysteries or like really deep within the game. It wouldn't be like everything. You're like, so why is this? Why is that? Even down to the Zonai. Like the Zonai make no sense if you really think about it. How they just like came out of nowhere and now they're so integral to Hyrule's past. They're a part. But again, Nintendo's just wanting you to kind of piece it yourself, and I understand that. I'm not too upset with it, like I said, but I just feel like Tears of the Kingdom, definitely didn't do it as well as other Zelda games. They left too many mysteries to where you're just you're really wanting some answers. Not all answers, but just some, Yeah,
and I mean, they've made it clear in interviews that this is the way that they do their stories, and I think going forward, assuming we're not returning to this Hyrule, which personally I hope we don't. I think we're ready for something new now.
100%.
I think when they design a new game and a new story with this kind of I don't want to say incomplete approach, but deliberately vague approach to storytelling, I think it will work. I think it'll work just as well as Breath of the Wild, as Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker. I think it will work fine because they will set up mysteries that they don't need to answer themselves. I think they are fantastic at creating a sense of magic, a sense of intrigue to the worlds that they design. But yeah, I think answering those mysteries is something that they can't do. So obviously, Breath of the Wild had the ancient Sheikah, but Tears of the Kingdom instead had the ancient Zonai. Obviously, that was a mystery that we had ever since Breath of the Wild. Zonai ruins were strewn all across Hyrule, with a civilization that vanished mysteriously thousands of years ago. But other than that, we really knew nothing about the tribe until now. What are your opinions on the Zonai now that we know what they are?
So as cool as they seem in the game, they definitely came out of left field. With the Sheikah, it was a lot easier to digest because we know the Sheikah from the series, being a secretive tribe that protects the royal family. And it's like, oh, so now they got this whole new backstory. They are a huge part of Hyrule's past. And if anything, the way Breath of the Wild made it seem was like they were abolished from the kingdom to be rediscovered. It was such a cool aspect, and it worked really well. I really love the way the Sheikah were reintroduced, and now that they actually mean a lot more than they ever did throughout the series. But the Zonai never existed until Breath of the Wild, and what we knew of them were like, I thought they were like a barbaric tribe, like that worship dragons and animals and stuff.
Right.
Like, it was very vague. It did not seem like they were the founders of Hyrule, or at least, the king, the original king of the new version of Hyrule, of course, was a Zonai. It was completely out there. In my eyes, it definitely seemed a bit like, forced. You just gotta accept it, because I don't think they deserve this much credit for what they ended up being. We've never heard about them in the series prior, so for some reason there's some race that just magically came to Hyrule during its new existence, and they became founders, yet they already have a past that we know nothing about, because when Hyrule was founded, there was only 2 left. So it's like, there's just too much going on with them that is unexplained, and like, again, outside of having them being the founder, having them have tech that even surpasses the Sheikah tech, and their magic is beyond this world. It's like everything about them just seems like they have so much plot armor that you're just too lucky. Everything's too good for them just to come out of nowhere and then to be all of that. So it really seemed like Nintendo just forced this to be a new thing. It's like they wanted to diversify the series a little bit and add something new, and because of that, we ended up getting something that just doesn't really fit too much. And it sucks again, because we didn't really get to know them too well. We got to know the last 2 of their kind, and that's it. And we do have an idea that maybe one of Link's spirits was reincarnated into a Zonai, but that's not even confirmed. We're not 100% certain, because when you look at the ancient heroes aspect,
we'll get onto that later. That's a whole other
but it
thing.
doesn't look like a Zonai is my point. So
no, it does not.
So it's like, what are the Zonais? Are they like llama dragons? I mean, Minoru looks not even like Minoru and Rauru, for being siblings, don't even look the same. They have different like fur color. Rauru's green while Minoru's like gray, and it just, there's a lot of too many unanswered questions. I like it, but I don't know. I just feel like it's just out of nowhere, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like the game itself, there's many things I do like about Zonai, and many things I don't. I think on your point of them having come out of nowhere, I think Nintendo kind of have flirted with this idea of the Zonai, not the Zonai in name as we know them as these dragon people, but of an advanced civilization closely related to the gods that live in the sky, and often have something to do with Hyrule's founding. That's kind of a recurring theme throughout the game. You have throughout the games, you have the Wind Tribe in the Minish Cap, as well as kind of the Picori in the Minish Cap, are also said to have come from the skies, obviously closely related to the gods. Then you have the Oka in Twilight Princess, which highly advanced sky civilization.
Very creepy looking though.
So
but that's
very
true.
Creepy looking, very MC-esher. So I think it was inevitable that we would see something like the Zonai make a return at some point, because it is a concept that they've been trying to realize for quite a long time. But on the other hand, I think the way they were introduced in Tears of the Kingdom was a miss, because we didn't see the Zonai. We saw the very end of the line of the Zonai. We saw Rauru and Minoru, like you said, as the last remaining of their people, which kind of goes against the whole mystery of them, in that we're in the present, we're adventuring through ancient Zonai ruins as Link. We're using ancient Zonai devices, learning things about what life was like in the distant past through Zelda's geoglyphs, but it kind of feels like we don't see far enough back. We only see Rauru's Hyrule and the dwindling of the Zonai. We never see anything more about who they were, or any the closest we get really, I think, to seeing much about the Zonai in the past is the Legend of the Stormwind arc from the Rito Village questline, where it passed down through the Rito tribe for generations is this myth that a long time ago they were facing another similar problem to the upheaval, where the wind stopped and the Rito were no longer able to fly. And then they claimed that a god fell from the sky and couldn't return to his people who lived above the clouds. And there's a whole legend about how they helped him climb back into the heavens, and then he gave the Stormwind Arc as a gift to the Rito. And that's one of my favourite bits of lore from the whole game, because it's kind of a little tease of the Zonai as they were. There's a line in I can't remember if it's in the song or the book about the Stormwind Arc that says, when the Rito finally poked their heads above the clouds and saw the Zonai civilization, it was this beautiful world above the clouds. And we see the ruins of that in Tears of the Kingdom, but unlike Breath of the Wild, where we explore the ruins but discover the truth of them and see Hyrule in its prime through the memories, we never see the Zonai civilization in its prime, which is a real shame. I think if they were going to go back and answer this mystery of who the Zonai are, I'd have liked to see them kind of commit to it a bit more. Because as of now, we really... we probably know less in a weird way than we did back in Breath of the Wild, when we knew absolutely nothing about the Zonai.
Yeah.
Now we know that they're this strange half-dragon people that are said to be descended from the gods. But it kind of opens up way more questions than it gives us answers about who they are. Which, again, like we said, that's their method of storytelling. But I personally would have liked to see more of them.
100%. And like, yeah, it just makes you wonder, like, were they on the same level as the goddess Hylia? Like, they must have been, in the sense of, like, Hylia was able to create the Triforce and, become immortal, to survive from, Demise's attack and all of that. You know what happened in Skyward Sword, and then it became like a lineage where it just kind of went down and down the line. It's like, so did the Zonai have a similar story in that sense, where they were also gods and then made themselves mortal? Because they hold divine powers outside of just their ancient tech and all of that. They also have the Zonai Secret Stones, which in my eyes I feel like were the equivalent of the Triforce in Tears of the Kingdom. Like, even to the point where this Ganon, I'm assuming it is a reincarnation of Ganon, because he was able to regain trust of the Gerudo, and he didn't have memory of his past, slaying Hyrule, doing all the stuff he did before. Like, it was like a new interpretation, but it also didn't make any sense because he knew of the Zonai, and the way he remarks about the Zonai, like, I'm not entirely sure if he's mocking them in the sense of, like, you've stooped down to the Hylians, or you've stooped, or if you went up to the Hylians, like, he's like,
when he says you've certainly risen above your admirable lineage. That, right? I think that's definitely a dig at Roru, saying you've overstepped your mark. I think at that point Ganondorf is jealous of Roru and the power he holds, and and I think he's saying you've overstepped. You descended from these godlike beings. You didn't need to also control Hyrule. We can get onto Ganondorf and his motivations in a little bit.
I know, 100%. But my point is, I guess there's too many unanswered questions. I'd like to think that maybe they have the same divine powers as Hylia, and then, were kind of brought down to a mortal state and then ended up, becoming extinct. But, like, again, we're just going to go in circles because most of this is speculation, sadly.
But you touched on an interesting point a couple of minutes ago when you said, you brought up in Breath of the Wild, the Zonai seemed like a savage kind of warlike civilization, based on their ruins, based on the barbarian outfit. And then that's so different to this godlike advanced civilization we saw in Tears of the Kingdom. And obviously the answer is that they hadn't planned for the Zonai to be
they retconned that
this
idea.
way.
They're like, no, we're Yep, I agree.
So that's a little bit jarring just because of the fact that they retroactively fitted it. But it kind of opens up interesting storytelling interesting theory possibilities if you take it at face value, which sometimes you have to do it with looking at Zelda stories. You have to ignore the real world situation about why the stories are the way they are, and look at them as if you are in the universe, which does lead to some interesting possibilities like that, because the savage nature of the barbarian set is so vastly different to the godlike Zonai that it's basically a separate tribe. So you have to wonder whether people took over the ruins after the Zonai, or whether
it could have been it, like very you literally like just a uneducated type of group tribe of people found this stuff and made their own, but like in a very barbaric way, and just started worshiping their stuff. Like it could have been like just like they discovered a different past and then they made it their own, like culture and tribe and way of living, but didn't really understand it. We can look at it, but but we don't know.
We can't talk about the Zonai without talking about Zonai vehicles and Zonai machines. So, what are your opinions on the Zonai building in Tears of the Kingdom?
So, I feel like I got a lot to say about this, but to kind of summarize, I definitely feel like this was Nintendo's biggest issue with the game, because it was the biggest thing they wanted to add. It's the biggest improvement from Breath of the Wild, and the way I guess they saw people play Breath of the Wild, and seeing how people utilize the sandbox and everything, and messed around, and all of those little clips, because you could record with your Nintendo Switch and then upload it, and seeing all the funny, hilarious things. I feel like Nintendo really wanted to actually put effort into making more and having people do whatever they want with the game, but they went too far. It's like the little bit we had in Breath of the Wild was fun enough, but when they made a full-on world that you could just build and do whatever you want, it gave us too much freedom to where it became super underutilized. And it's an issue because that, I feel like that is the main draw to the game. Even when they were first advertising the game, it was like, an adventure fueled by your imagination. It's all about the way you want to do things. And, the little bit of clips we saw of Link on all these different vehicles, but it's like most Zelda fans, at least what I like to believe, is they don't even want to play the game that way. You're going to build a very few couple things, but you're not going to do enough with it to where that's going to be the basis of the game. And with the game relying so much on that, it sucks, because I love its features, but it's not enough to entice me to put in an extra 1,000 hours just messing around. It's such a well thought out concept, and I do believe that's the main reason why the game was delayed so long, right? They were just constantly testing it and trying to make it work. But it's a shame, because it's really good, but maybe I'm just old and jaded. I've gotten older. I don't appreciate it as much, and I think just deep down I want to play what makes Zelda Zelda. I don't want to play Minecraft in Zelda, like it's very much in that sense where you really need to use your creativity. And again, I have fun with it, but I don't see that should be the main draw to the game. And I feel like Nintendo relied a lot on that it took away from the actual game and what it could have been, because that was such a heavy component. So as much as I love it and it is really fun and it diversifies the game, it's not, to me, it's not the selling point. It's not good enough to be like this. And luckily there's so much more the game has to offer, but I don't know, just something about it, just it doesn't hook me as much as it should have, as much as I thought it would. And maybe it's also because it didn't have as much to offer as I thought it was. Like, even though there's so much to build, you're limited to like 20 21 things you can attach to one thing.
Yeah.
They despawn
Yeah.
when you enter shrines, so you can't even keep them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can auto build, but that becomes inconvenient eventually. There's not enough, and none of it even amounts to as good as like the Master Cycle Zero. I feel like no matter what you build, you're not gonna get something as good as the Sheikah's Master Cycle Zero, and that sucks because it's like I want something really, really fun that I can use, and maybe if I could have built something in that level and have it that cool, maybe I would have enjoyed it more. But everything I feel like I build it's still watered down in a sense. It's not enough. But yeah, I said I was gonna keep it short, but I ended up going on. What about you though?
I all I can do is echo what you've said. I agree that it is very un-Zelda, the vehicle building. But I think from a game design perspective, like what they managed to do with the vehicle building is, it's nothing short of a marvel. It's absolutely incredible that they managed to get this system working as flawlessly as it works. The fact that you can cobble together a random collection of Zonai wheels and fans and then put a steering stick on it and it will control well is just unbelievable. Like the way that they managed to implement the building system, the way it works so flawlessly with how the physics of this world work, it is incredible. And I think that's one of the main wow factors of the game, is when you first experiment with Zonai parts and realize just how seamlessly they managed to implement something that should not be seamless, something that should have been very, very difficult to put together, works flawlessly. But
it is underutilized and undercredited. It's not like Nintendo puts so much effort into something people aren't going to actually make use of as much, sadly.
I agree with you that I prefer the kind of classic Zelda things. I prefer to just, be a guy on a horse than build my own car and drive around. But that aside, I would love to experiment and build incredible vehicles and stuff. I just don't feel the game incentivizes that enough. I think you already mentioned one of the big problems is that the vehicles despawn, and yeah, you can rebuild them with auto build, but it costs a lot more parts or a lot of zonite. And it kind of really kills the motivation to spend a lot of time building a big vehicle where the pieces that you build it from are going to despawn in a couple of minutes, or you're going to get distracted by a shrine or something, and you're going to come out of the shrine and your vehicle's gone. I think there's a jarring element to the vehicle system that you can tell that they did it because they experimented and it worked and it is fun, but also, should they have gone that direction with the game? Should they have included such a open vehicle crafting system in Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah,
maybe not. I don't know if the game needed it. And people will say, yeah, well, it's optional, and that's true, of course it is, but it's in the game, we're going to discuss it. It's a big part of the game. It was a big part of the marketing. It was a reason, like you said, that the game was delayed for a year. Like, whatever your opinions on the vehicle building, it is one of the core parts of Tears of the Kingdom. And yeah, as fun and impressive as it is,
you could play the whole game and not even use it once. Like, it's so optional that it kind of takes away, and it's a good thing. I mean, luckily it's no nuts and bolts where you have to, and that's what killed the game, like Banjo-Kazooie. That's what everyone was referencing it to. But yeah, it's not enough to keep someone who isn't a fan of that to want to keep going. And even if you do try to invest, you're gonna find certain aspects that you just don't like, or that will limit you to want to keep using it. That it is just such a shame, because again, you can tell the care and thought process Nintendo put in. It is very like, it's crazy to think that this game is a whole open world. It has everything an open world has to offer and more, and then it has that on top of it. Like, Nintendo exceeded their expectations for what a game should offer and gave us so much more, and it is very appreciated. It's just sad that most people don't have the time, the creativity, or the desire to want to use that as much as they thought it would. And I feel like I don't know if Nintendo mainly figures out the way the game should be played through their own playtesting, or do they actually look at what other people do? Because if they were looking at what the fans enjoyed, then they were misled. Because Breath of the Wild, it made it seem like all people want to do is mess around with the engine. The engine is perfect. It's it has the realistic sense of the gravity and everything, but then it has that slapstick feel where just everything is over the top and goofy, and it's super fun to just mess around. Again, I'm talking about with all those clips of like people having certain, metal blocks fall, or like launching Link around and doing all of that funny stuff. So it's like, I felt like Nintendo wanted to really, really emphasize that aspect and give us more. Because when they made Breath of the Wild, I don't think they were thinking that deep into how much people would enjoy messing around with the engine itself. So they're like, okay, let's put that as one of our main focuses. But now it's like, maybe because people are just kind of done with this world and this Hyrule and this, not necessarily this engine, but just kind of it's lost that novelty, because we've had Breath of the Wild for 5-6 years before this game came out, and just getting more of it didn't hit as well. Like if Tears of the Kingdom was the first game we got 6 years ago, I feel like people would have looked at this in a completely different light. But because we got Breath of the Wild, it's hard to like just be like, okay, well now we can do more, but it's just not gonna hit as well, sadly.
I think the parts of the game where the Zonai vehicles made the most sense and were the most enjoyable to me are the parts where the game actually forced you to use them.
Like carrying crystals and stuff.
Carrying crystals, the shrines that make you use them. They're great fun. Reaching the sky labyrinths, again, you kind of almost not technically forced to. I suppose there probably is another way to get up there. I don't know. It's Tears of the Kingdom. But the parts of the game where you were really forced to use them, I think, is when they shine.
Yep.
I rarely found myself creating some, bizarre, massive plane to get across Hyrule where, I'd just teleport to a sky island and dive from there, or I'd build the hover bike and that would do... That's
it, yeah.
That would do everything that a bigger vehicle would have done. And I think it's kind of a problem that Tears of the Kingdom has as a whole, is that the amount of freedom it gives you is obviously incredible, but I kind of wish it restricted you more in certain places. Because I think that's when you have to get creative in the way you think, is when there are restrictions. Whereas if you're given every option in the world, you just revert to the hover bike, you just revert to the easiest option you can.
That's true.
Which is a shame.
Let's be real, like most of the shrines you either use the hover bike or you just glide. Gliding was just as convenient, if not easier, and you don't have to worry. And it doesn't help, like now that you mentioned the hover bike, it doesn't help that if you decide to be ambitious and build something very creative, you're kind of punished, because that whatever you build will despawn way quicker. The more Zonai parts you have, the more energy you have to use to move it, the quicker it just despawns. It has less value, and it's like that is a problem. There should have been a way around it, so that you end up wanting to build the simplest, dumbed down version of something that will just get you by, and you end up not caring, and it removes that creativity because you're limited and you're not able to actually enjoy your insane builds. It is. To me, that also just takes away.
Like you said about the Master Cycle Zero being more efficient than anything else. If the Master Cycle Zero was an option in Tears of the Kingdom, it's very clear why it isn't. Is that you would never interact with the vehicle building system if you could spawn something like the Master Cycle Zero. And that's the problem with the hover bike, is that you never want to interact with the vehicle building system, because if you need a device to get you from A to B, it's 2 fans and a steering stick.
And it's like the fastest you can go.
And it outperforms anything else.
Exactly. Fastest, doesn't despawn, small and minimal, can get through anything. You can fly it through caves. It's just so versatile that it's like, why would I do anything else? It's the equivalent of the Master Cycle Zero in that game.
I've heard people say, if you don't like how good the hoverbike is, don't build it. But then it feels like you're intentionally restricting yourself, because it's not like an exploit. It's not like, of course the game's too easy, you're duping all the resources. It's not like you're doing something that the game doesn't want you to do.
Yep.
It's you're interacting with the Zonai building system in the most efficient way you can. It'd be like saying, using Royal Guard weaponry is too powerful, or don't use that, use this instead. You should be able to use parts of the game that are designed the way they are. So I don't know, I think the problem with the building system overall is that there was no incentive to get as creative as it was designed to let you be.
Yep.
You can build anything you want, which is so incredible. I just kind of wish that I wish I was forced to get creative, which it is a shame.
Yep, exactly. And even the schematics, like as cool as they are, none of them are as good as the hover bike.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So even Nintendo's creations couldn't amount to that.
Exactly. But since you brought up the schematics, let's move down to the depths.
Okay.
Tell me what you thought about the Yiga and their role in the game. Because obviously very different to how they played in Breath of the Wild.
Okay. So personally, I feel like it definitely did redeem what little we had of the Yiga from Breath of the Wild. Master Koga was probably the biggest letdown Breath of the Wild had to offer, because it was like, a dark Sheikah tribe that betrayed the kingdom, and
the boss of the assassin clan.
Right.
Let's see what this guy looks like.
And then he just falls in a hole. But it's really funny because it set up where he would end up in the depths. Literally that hole takes you to the
That's
depths.
brilliant.
That is so, that was so
That's
smart.
a rare example of Tears of the Kingdom following on from a Breath of the Wild plotline in the perfect way. That just made so much sense. And overall, Master Koga, I'm such a fan of him in Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah. So
he is so good.
He doesn't make any sense though to me, because like he's trying to get the auto build rune from Link, and he's putting his hand in front of it and constantly like, why isn't it working? It's not, how'd it work on you? But then when you fight him, he snaps a giant vehicle and boom, he's trying to run you over. It's like, okay, bro, you have the best auto build. You just snap and boom, you get a Zonai device. So what are you talking about? Like, its plot makes no sense in that regard. If you really think about it.
Of course, I think it's easier to excuse Koga than it is some of the more serious parts of the game, because he's meant to be the comic relief, but I just think he was so enjoyable in Tears of the Kingdom.
No, 100%. And it is cool that you kind of follow him throughout the depths, and it was something to do in the depths, because I don't want to specifically I feel like we didn't really touch up too much on the depths, but just to kind of mention, the depths definitely seemed like the most underutilized area within the game, because it was so ambitious, it was so big, it was so special, but there's no NPCs.
And they kept it secret as well. We didn't know at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's because we were talking about the trailers earlier. They didn't even show the depths in any of the trailers, except vaguely we saw like a bit of the Fire Temple in the final trailer. But we had no idea that this is what they had in store. And it's crazy because the depths had more to offer than the sky, yet the sky was used as the marketing for the game, not the depths. So it's like Nintendo wanted to say, I appreciate that from Nintendo. That's something Nintendo always does. They never want to spoil everything within their trailers. They love to keep stuff hidden. They want that player to have that surprise and wonder when they play the game, and not just be like all other game companies where they show their best and biggest thing from the game in the trailer to use it as a hooking point. Nintendo want to save something, so that is definitely well appreciated. But back to Master Koga, it was really nice, of course, to have him like in journey throughout the depths and have something to do and find him in each abandoned mine and take him on and everything. But I don't know, for me it's like it definitely did redeem him as a character compared to what Breath of the Wild offered us. But I still feel like the Yiga are pretty underutilized. It is cool to have like, one of the shrines, literally you have to find all the Yiga or the statues and put a banana and everything. And I think the Yiga altogether, the comedic relief of the game, like it's not just Master Koga. They're silly, but serious. It has that nice kind of, mixture between the two. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think the silliness is something that didn't hit for me in Breath of the Wild, and I think that was because of the idea of an evil Sheikah clan sounded so cool, and then the reality of the Yiga clan, it didn't click for me back then. But I think going into Tears of the Kingdom, I knew what to expect from the Yiga. So as soon as we saw Master Koga return, we knew exactly what we were going for.
Yep.
And I think maybe that's why I preferred it this time, because I had no expectations that it was going to be anything different. But I just think the Yiga really, really hit their stride in this game. Like, they're just funny. Like, in the depths, there's sometimes you find little lines of bananas that they've left, trying to like lure Link somewhere. And then I think it's in the Akala Tech Lab. There's a Yiga book. And it's one Yiga saying how they've left these traps for Link, and how he admits that he's accidentally fallen for one himself. And the idea of them laying these banana traps and then kind of falling for their own trap. Yeah. It's just funny.
Oh, and like the way they draw Link, like how they have like on every Yiga base.
With the little horns.
The little horn. Yeah, it looks like a pig. Dude, that's so funny.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, maybe it is that I wasn't expecting them to be this serious thing. But yeah, I think the Yiga were really good. I think chasing Koga around the depths as well, I really like that. Because like you said, I haven't really touched on the depths. I agree, that it was Tears of the Kingdom's kind of using the classic Zelda concept of a dark world where it's like an inverted Hyrule. But unfortunately, there wasn't quite enough in it to incentivize exploring everything. So that's why I think maybe the Koga quest clicked for me, because it was the main reason to explore the depths.
Yep, literally that and
the Koga quest
the schematics, which is cool. The Yiga bases,
and the schematics,
utilized the Yiga even more. It's truly the Yiga were the only things that made the depths interesting. Sadly, outside of the few other secrets, which were like the bargainer statues and finding the amiibo, through the old maps.
Yeah. But, from a lore perspective as well, I think the Yiga are probably the most interesting part about the depths. The way I love how you can read their journal entries, and you get the story of how they followed Master Koga down the pit and they discovered this whole new world before Ganondorf was resurrected. And they start spreading out across the depths and encountering all the weird things down there. Like, they talk about the ghosts of the Hylian soldiers. They talk about Froxes. That's a really, really nice bit of lore that I think Tears of the Kingdom didn't have enough of that, in my opinion. Little things like that make the world feel real. They make it feel like these are characters that genuinely live in Hyrule, even when the game's turned off. Whereas I think most other things in Tears of the Kingdom, it felt very artificial. It felt like a game. But I think the Yiga storyline was something different. I really liked that.
100%. I guess we should just transition straight to the depths now, since we were touching on it. So what were your thoughts though about the depths? Like I mentioned, it was a big surprise, but how do you feel about it in general?
So I really, really love the kind of vibe of the depths. I love the atmosphere. I love the music. I love the way it is like a dark world with more difficult monsters. The only problem with the depths is once you've explored a little bit of it, you've explored the whole thing. It's so monotonous. There's one biome. And it's the same set of enemies across the whole thing, with recycled bosses from the dungeons.
That was appreciated. I can appreciate that.
I'm happy to fight them again. They're fun, but once you refight them all once, then if you encounter them again, it's like, oh, right, okay, I'll do it again for the crystallized charges, but I'd prefer to fight something different. And then outside of the Froxes, there's nothing really else.
Like unique
I
to the
appreciate
depths.
it. Exactly, yeah. I do appreciate the way it is a mirror of Hyrule, and it is very interesting to see what locations on the surface become in the depths.
Yep.
I think that's quite interesting.
Like how the mountains become shallow and really, or like really deep and dark, and it's literally like you said, an inverted version of Hyrule. It's super interesting in that sense. Yep.
And seeing the inverted versions of certain points of interest is really, really fascinating. Like below Satori Mountain is Bloopy Hollow, which is this kind of weird area with a cherry blossom tree and all these bloopies, or below Akala Citadel, you get the Sunken Citadel, Forgotten Fortress, something fortress, underground fortress, or something along those lines.
Or like even below the Temple of Time, the big bargainer statue, the ancient
central abandoned mine. Yep. So that was interesting, seeing the parallels between surface and depth. Yep. But yeah, overall, there isn't enough down there to justify it being as massive as it is. I've seen a few people suggest online, and I agree with them, that I think I would have preferred it if it was a few smaller but more densely populated areas. So maybe you've got central Hyrule depths that
kind of like
exactly like Elden Ring.
Yep.
Exactly like Elden Ring. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Elden Ring's underground is far smaller, obviously, than the depths.
Yep.
But it's every bit as detailed as the surface above
Yeah, like it corresponds to what's on the surface, and it has certain locations. Yeah, you can't find it everywhere. It's not fully intertwined and connected, but it has the same. It was going for the same idea, And when I first saw the depths, I immediately thought of Elden Ring's underground section, but. Yeah, 100%. The thing is, Nintendo tried to give us way too much that it ended up becoming very, very boring in that sense, because it was monotonous. It was just like more, just so much more of the same that you get bored so quickly, just discovering the same thing. And then the light routes, sadly, they don't really offer much. While they do light up the area, they don't light it up enough. And then once you light all of them up, nothing happens. There is no difference. So it's like, I understand that people can say the main point of it is to locate the shrines, because there is that. That is one thing the depths is very helpful in, with locating the shrines. They help you find the ones in the caves, as they literally are connected to everyone on the surface. So the 120 surface shrines, 120 depths light routes. But it's not enough. It's definitely not enough. And truly, outside of like you said, Koga, and then the bargainer statues and those small little landmarks that you could appreciate, there's nothing. It's just emptiness, and just so much empty land, just to give you a reason to explore, to pad more game time to reach another light room. That's essentially what you're doing. Once you really understand the way it works, it loses all that charm. Like when you first discover the depths, it's probably the best feeling. It's one of the best feelings I got in any video game ever. It like,
I completely agree.
Right? It like completely shook my mind. It was so insane. But then once I understood the depths, it became the most boring feature in any video game, and it just lost all that charm. Yeah.
Exactly. Because the first time you encounter the depths, it's genuinely terrifying. I remember
the horn, especially on you drop down
the OLED Switch screen as well. It's just
true.
Jet black. But it's genuinely terrifying. When you drop down, there's the horn. You can't see 5 feet in front of you. It was absolutely amazing at the start, but then it's kind of symptomatic of the whole game, that the more you explore and the more you look into it, the more shallow it seems. The depths are quite literally a mile wide and an inch deep. They're I do wish there was more to do. That's the problem. Everything else about the depths is great. The environment is the environment is so interesting, the way it's an inverted Hyrule. The music, the atmosphere. I just wish there was more to do. I wish there was quests down there. I wish there was NPCs, maybe, you know, a village down there,
Right.
or just something more, I think.
Side quests to do down there. Even an NPC on the surface
Yeah.
wanting you to find something that fell in the depths, do something, like just give us more meaning to explore its world. It's like it's weird. It's like the one issue that I had with Breath of the Wild was like you gave us this beautiful giant world and then you didn't utilize it well enough, in the sense of like you could have given us more to do, more go from point A to point B, just have us explore the world more. It wasn't enough. And then they remedy that in Tears of the Kingdom with like, okay, well, we added caves, we added more stuff, we even have side quests where you have to carry one person from the other. You know, you go on a river, you know, make a boat, take them from that side, you know, to a different part of, you know, Hyrule. It's like, it was so well done. It's like, but then you give us the depths and it has the same lack of things that I felt like, it's like, again, it felt like a beta. And then what, are we supposed to wait until the next game for you to realize that you could do more with it and then utilize it? It's like, that isn't how it should work. It should be well developed from the very beginning. It shouldn't feel so underdeveloped because it's their first time exploring this idea. Yeah.
How did you feel they compared to the Sky Islands then? Being the other expansion to Hyrule.
So, yeah, it's kind of a similar scenario. So, like I said, the way Tears of the Kingdom remedied the surface, I feel like the surface definitely is the best surface Hyrule has ever given us. It's really good. It's dense. It's perfect.
No question.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. But just like the depths, the sky is a beta. It's incomplete. It's an idea Nintendo had that they didn't fully develop. It's they thought of one thing and then they gave up, or they just sat and copy pasted, because like we said earlier, outside of the Sky Islands, the sky is so underwhelming. It's literally archipelagos copied and pasted all throughout the map with shrines, the same exact shrines, literally the same exact way you do them too. There is almost no difference.
Crystal ones.
Yeah, the crystal ones, the way you find them. It's like no other puzzle. There is nothing different. There isn't even a slight difference with things. You know, like ones I really enjoyed that were on the surface was like one that kind of was similar to the Gerudo, or I believe, the Gerudo Highlands tower, where you wait for the shadow to perfectly be on that Sheikah platform, and once it aligns perfectly, you get that shrine, right? That was really cool. And you had to do something similar with one of the Zonai things, and you have to kind of move it around and make sure the sun shadow was perfectly hitting. That was super fun, super cool. And it's like, I want to see stuff like that. You just like unique, fun shrine puzzles in the sky, but it was literally copy and paste. Every archipelago had the same layout. There was almost no difference. There was like one or two differences, of course, you know, with what was above Faron was unique, of course, and then there was all the valor and courage, and I forgot the last one. You know, so they're all meaning courage, bravery, essentially. Yeah. Bravery. Yes, they're all courageous. Yeah. The courageous islands. Yeah, they were, and there was that, but it was again more of the same, and it's sad, because both the depths and the sky were just like so underutilized. And again, great additions, but not enough. What about yourself?
Yeah. Well, I completely agree with the copy paste point. On the topic of the courage, bravery, valor islands, I can't have been the only person that found Courage Island first and then thought we were going to find a Power Island and a Wisdom Island. Same. So I did that. I did the Courage one, and I was like, oh, it's courage. It's a leap of faith. Of course, that makes sense. Yep. I wonder what the Wisdom Island. The Wisdom Island's going to have to be a puzzle. Yeah, Power's going to have to be like a combat.
I thought the same thing. I swear to God.
Did you do the same? Yeah. But you know, the fact that there's so many archipelagos that are all identical, which is a shame, because we know that during development there were more larger Sky Islands. We saw them at the end of the E3 2021 trailer. We know that there were more islands that they took out because they thought the sky was too cluttered. But I just can't stress enough how I really wanted more great Sky Islands. I thought the whole introduction to Tears of the Kingdom is just so great. And it's just a kind of a downhill slide from there, where you realise that you're never going to experience something like the Great Sky Island again, because it's the only one of its kind, which is just so strange to me. I think doing putting more things like that in the sky wouldn't have made it more cluttered. It would have given us more things to do, and I really don't see why they didn't do that.
Yep, and the Great Sky Island is like one of the furthest islands in the sky. It's really high up compared to all the other archipelagos. That it's hard to see. Like the render distance isn't that good. You barely see it when you're on the surface. That it wouldn't have actually ruined the illusion or kind of ruined the way the sky looks. And let's be real, you're seeing giant circles, you know, of those giant orb islands that you enter. And you see like
Death Stars,
right? And they all look, they all already obscure the sky so much that it's like, if you added a couple more, it wasn't going to change anything. Like there's no way that could have been the reason. No matter what, it already looks like a weird Mario level from the sky.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
the ones where it's kind of like lines of blocks,
right? Exactly, like
the Rising Island chain,
exactly, and the Zora one.
Yeah,
both of
and
those.
the Zora,
So
whereas they look very strange from the surface, where another giant landmass would not have looked strange. I think that would have looked good, if anything.
Exactly, yeah, because the Great Sky Islands
I don't get
the best,
the cluttered argument.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree.
Exactly, I completely agree.
And it's a shame, because like they should have had an actual temple within the sky. I understand we have the water temple and wind temple, but it's like those are so like the water temple is smaller than the archipelagos. It is nothing. Like sure, the islands leading up to it adds to it and it feels like a level of its own, but it's like that's what. And then the wind temple is the ship, a ship in the sky. It's there's not enough. It is so sad. It reminds me of Skyward Sword. I had the exact same feeling with Skyward Sword. You first discover the sky, you're like, oh, so this is Wind Waker, but in the sky. Like that's the first thing I think of when I play Skyward Sword. It's like you have that, you leave the sky or the Skyloft, and then you're supposed to find other islands alike, but then you find nothing else. Nothing amounts to that, and it's like that's the same thing. Sadly, we got with Tears of the Kingdom. Again, at least we have more things to do on the surface, and we have the depths. But it's like they marketed the game with the sky, but they gave us nothing besides the tutorial to really enjoy and explore.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the water and wind temples, so we might as well segue into the game's dungeons.
Okay.
I completely agree on the water temple. I think that might have been the most disappointing 3D dungeon I've ever played through.
Especially for being named Water Temple. Like, water temples are notorious for being the hardest.
You expect something complicated.
Right?
And the build-up is great to it. I loved, going to the ancient Zora waterworks and stuff until I realized that you're only in there for 5 minutes.
Yep.
But the temple itself, I don't know, I beat it in maybe 10, 15 minutes.
15's
like,
pushing
on my first time, where usually, you have to think about the puzzles and whatever. There's just nothing there. It's about 5 islands floating together. I kind of thought it was like part 1 or like the introduction room or something like that. I didn't believe that was the whole temple when I first played it.
Yep.
But yeah, I think the other dungeons are considerably better, but they're still not quite on that upper echelon of 3D Zelda dungeons. I think I do have a soft spot for the Wind Temple. I know it's short, I know it's easy, but I think that one has such a fantastic atmosphere that it does kind of raise it above the others, in my opinion.
It does.
The whole build-up, especially with going up the Rising Island chain with Tulin, with that music building and building, the higher you climb into this storm, and then you eventually reach I've already talked about the legend of the Stormwind Arc, but you discover this lost artifact from this ancient myth, and that was just fantastic. And then the music and the atmosphere of the dungeon itself was brilliant. I just wish it was harder, and I wish it was longer.
100%.
That's what she said. But
and easily it was the best in terms of atmosphere, not just because you were on a ship, but it's like I'm someone, okay, I understand it's really cool to be able to create a temple still in the exact same overworld as everything else and be able to see Hyrule while you're taking on the temple, but it's like the fact that we did have the giant storm that the ship was centered in, obscuring the rest of Hyrule and taking you away, made it seem like its own thing, and you were able to like really focus on where you were at and kind of get lost in the temple itself. And it's like, I feel like we needed more of that, but no, instead they want it to be interconnected with everything, and that takes away, because then it doesn't feel like a temple, something of its own. It just feels like, oh, it's just another part of the overworld that you just solve a couple puzzles in and then leave. Like, it doesn't have that temple feel that other temples did in previous games.
Yeah, like in Skyward Sword, where there's a dedicated little cutscene whenever you enter a dungeon where, Link walks down the steps into the darkness, and it's a completely different atmosphere. Sets the atmosphere. Yeah. Which I feel we got most of all with the Lightning Temple, I think, in Tears of the Kingdom. I think because, you're inside this ancient pyramid and you get a kind of whole Indiana Jones section getting to the main room.
That is true. I'd say the Lightning Temple delivers most, but sadly the other two Depths temples are kind of the same as the problem with the Water Temple. Like, they just feel like just interconnected with the rest of it, and it doesn't feel like you're really, especially the Spirit Temple. Like, it was not, it was just like a fetch quest, and it was just in the depths. It had nothing unique. I
think it's fun. I think the individual puzzles building Minoru's construct, I did enjoy them. I do think it's fun, but it's not a dungeon. It's not enough to be a Zelda dungeon. So I think I prefer that to the Water Temple, but it's not up there with the best. And I think the Fire Temple is great, but only if you play it properly.
Yeah, because you can break it so much. You can break it. And that's what makes it feel like it's interconnected, because you're just like, nah, I could just fly, I can rock it, I can just do whatever and break it, and it doesn't have that feeling. Yeah, no, so it's a problem, sadly. Again, aesthetically it looks cool, but...
Yeah, it's something we talked about in the last episode, is that Tears of the Kingdom gives you so much freedom, which is amazing, but then the fact that you can break things so easily takes away from the design of these dungeons. It's the same for the shrines. You can break them so easily that you can just circumvent the puzzle that the developers are trying to set for you. By design, you can circumvent them by, like, obviously fusing rockets to your shields or creating a hover bike or whatever. That's a central part of the game, so it's not like you're cheating. It's like you're playing the game in the way you want to play it. And it is unfortunate that you can just kind of skip most of the Fire Temple, because I think if you play that properly, with all the minecart stuff, it is one of the better temples. I think I would probably rank it below the Lightning Temple. It probably is above the Wind Temple in terms of, the actual game design of it, but I do like, I think because the Wind Temple was the first one I encountered during the game, and that build up and the atmosphere, I think, personally that's my favorite, but the temple itself, is lacking in some ways.
Was your reasoning for actually taking on the Wind Temple first, was it because you wanted the equivalent of whatever Rivali's Gale was in the game, or was it because the game nudged you to that direction? Because the game kind of wants you to take on the Wind Temple first, I feel like. Because it was my first temple as well.
It actually wasn't anything to do with Rivali's Gale. I think I wasn't thinking... maybe we'll get a similar ability, even though we got Chulin's ability is quite similar.
It is
horizontal
makes
rather than
exploration,
vertical.
But pretty much much easier.
It was a mix of, obviously the game does push you in that direction, and on a first playthrough I do like to kind of play the game as the game wants you to play it, to try and get the most out of it. But also I think it was one of the most interesting parts when I was speculating about the game and trying to work out
so it's
what
like
all
you
the
wanted to
Hyrule
see
meant.
it. You want to see that first. That was like, I need to see.
Seeing that big storm cloud, that was very interesting. So I did need to see what was there. And then when you get to Rito Village and it's it's all snowed under, the bridge is broken. It's kind of a village of lost children at that point. I think that's an example of Tears of the Kingdom at its best. I think the whole Rito storyline, the whole Rito sequence is definitely the best out of all 4 races. I think nothing comes close to the Rito one. And I think that was part of the reason that I kind of felt myself souring on the game about halfway through. Don't get me wrong, I still completely loved playing this game. It is still, one of the best games I've ever played. I'm not gonna lie and say I hate the game. It's just, I love the game so I can complain about the game.
Yeah, it's like tough love. It's because we're such huge fans. That's,
Exactly. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that I felt myself souring quite so drastically halfway through was I absolutely loved the introduction. I did the Rito story. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was so good. I wish the Wind Temple was a bit harder, but it was the first dungeon, so I thought, whatever. Then I went to do another, and I can't remember if it was fire or water that I did next. I think it would have probably been fire, because that's the way the game pushes you. And that's when I realised quite how formulaic it was, that you get the same thing where, the ancient sage says, "Come to me," and that's when I realised that it was going to be like Breath of the Wild's Divine Beasts, in that it's the same thing or in this case, kind of 5 times.
Yep.
And I think because I went to the Rito Village first, which is the best, I think it was downhill from there. But what's your personal favorite dungeon?
I would like personal favorite dungeon. So if we're not talking about the build up to the dungeon, because the build up I would say would probably be Zora, like going to the water temple. I'd say I enjoyed that the most because, Sidon, seeing him. Visiting Mipha's court, that's so cool. The music, the way, and it's kind of like, I'll be honest, I did like the kind of sunshine vibe I was getting. I was like, whoa, it's like, Tears of the Kingdom turned into Super Mario Sunshine with all the sludge and slime falling from the sky and having to throw water on it and uncover it. So it was a really cool, one of the coolest phenomena that you had to deal with. But of course, the temple was so underwhelming. But in terms of temples, I would have to say probably the Lightning Temple. I enjoyed that one a lot, and I'd say it reminds me the most of like Wind Waker's Sage Temples, because that was the one that you really had to make use of Riju in a different way, and she's unlike all the other companions and sages you have that can just jump right behind you and be with you. You actually had to have her follow you and utilize her in that sense, and she's like waiting in the center of the room to get the elevator to working, and there's something special about it. And again, the fact that it was atmospheric, it took me away from the world.
It was so good.
I want to be trapped in this area and really just focus on that and not look around, not see a shrine from the distance or be altered by the day and night cycle, or just kind of not put my entire focus on it. There's something special.
You want to go full dungeon mode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
But no, I agree that the Lightning Temple is really good. I think in particular the light mirror puzzles were so classic Zelda.
True.
That reminds me so much of like
Majora's Mask,
Stone Tower Temple. Or Wind Waker's Earth Temple.
True. And Wind Waker had it. Yeah.
Definitely strong things and I think the Lightning Temple's probably the hardest to break or circumvent.
100%.
Because I've played through the game, a few times now, and on recent runs I've skipped the whole Water Temple, basically skipped the whole Fire Temple, just like to do them quickly.
Yep.
Wind Temple, you can do it quite quickly, but there's not really a significant way to break that, particularly with Zonai, whatever. But the Lightning Temple, it kind of forces you down these narrow corridors.
Exactly, that's why. That's why you can't break it.
Exactly. So it kind of feels that you're not playing as the super duper overpowered Tears of the Kingdom Link. You're kind of, it's like you're playing a classic Zelda game as a less powerful Link with less options. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about how sometimes I want the game to restrict me and take away some of my powers.
Yep. Imagine if every temple was like entering a shrine, how you can't use your Zonai devices in shrines. Imagine if they did that with the temples. That would have been so much better. That would have fixed all the issues.
I think they should have done it.
Not all the issues.
I think they should have done it.
It would have made it better. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Giving too much freedom to the player is sometimes a bad thing.
So, dungeons aside, how do you feel about this game's shrines? Obviously, there's a load more of them than there are in Breath of the Wild, and it was a bit of a secret that shrines themselves were returning. That's something that they kept under wraps until the game came out. So yeah, how do you think these shrines compare to Breath of the Wild? Did you enjoy them? Yeah, what do you think?
So I mean, they definitely were. I'll be honest, I was a little bit upset when I first knew, like when I remember when Raru specifically pointed out the shrine, when you reach the door of the Temple of Time, and he's like, yeah, you got to take this on. I'm like, no, not again. I was honestly like truly upset. I'm like, not again.
Really?
Like, we're gonna do it this way. But it's like, you know, it was to be expected. We knew this. We knew this coming into the main gameplay loop, that the main objective was going to be shrines. Like it was kind of obvious, just like with this being a sequel to Breath of the Wild and all. And let's be real, as we've discussed, the temples don't really offer much. So the true meat and potatoes, the true grind of the game is the shrines, not the temples. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed them in a sense of like, you know, they're fun little things to do throughout the game. There's something to pad out the gameplay, but it was kind of like the same issue I had with Breath of the Wild, where once you do them, it gets kind of boring. And the difference, and this is something I always like to say, it's like the difference with Mario, and I guess people who are really big into Mario could argue against me, but like, the difference between a puzzle-like repetitive thing that you do versus a platformer-like thing is doing the puzzle thing again is actually more repetitive than doing something that's like a platform. So like what I mean by that is let's say you replay a Mario game, even if you know how to do the star, it's gonna slightly change up each time you do it, because you're platforming, you might mess up, you might play it differently, you might play it better, you know, that is fun to redo and replay. But like doing the same kind of mini objectives that have just the same frequency as stars did, but in shrines with Zelda, it's like it gets really repetitive really quickly and stale, because it's like, oh, okay, so I know I have to put this orb here, or I have to do this here. It's like you're not really changing anything. It's not any more fun the second time around. It's less fun. It gets more and more, you know, repetitive, but less and less fun each time you do it. So yeah, it's a shame. And then they made 152 shrines in total, so they, you know, added a whole 30 plus shrines compared to Breath of the Wild, and it was like so underwhelming in the sense of like the majority, like what, almost 50 of them were blessing shrines. That's one thing, so that's already 1/3 of the game shrines. And then like we mentioned before in the last video, a lot of them can be broken, so you don't even have to follow the puzzles. It's just really lackluster. And while I do enjoy them in the sense of like some of them are really fun, again, I just know coming back to them, they won't hold the same weight. And it's a shame. It's definitely something I want Nintendo to move on from. I'm excited for the next Zelda game, for this to be over. I don't want shrines to be the new gimmick of Zelda games. I want something else, 100%. What about you?
Interesting. I think I'm on the opposite side then of shrines. I'm a bit of a shrine apologist. I do like the concept of mini dungeons scattered across the world.
Well, I'd like them if they were themed. You know what I'm saying? Let's say there was like kind of like in Twilight Princess. I mean, there was only like 5 or 6 of them, but there was a couple of caves in the game that you know had to discover and had to do. If they were like that, where it's like you truly found a part of the world that held a puzzle like a shrine, but I didn't enter a shrine. I didn't have the same Zonai or Sheikah aesthetic. Didn't have the same cutscene of getting the orb, doing the same thing. It's just like, how many times do you expect the player to sit and watch the same thing again and again and see the same intro, see the same thing? It's just like, that is my biggest gripe with them. If they were unique and different, maybe I would get behind it. Okay, that'd just be 150 mini puzzles to do throughout the game that are fun, but that's not what they are. They're all formatted to be the same exact thing.
I agree with you there then. I agree. That was a problem I also had with Breath of the Wild's shrines. I felt, you know, obviously they're all Sheikah shrines, and it gets very monotonous, especially considering that the game's dungeons are also Sheikah dungeons, which is a problem that Tears of the Kingdom also suffers with, because all of the dungeons are to do with the Zonai. They're all full of constructs.
Yep.
Yeah, and the shrines do get repetitive in that sense. I do like, as I said, I do love the idea of mini dungeons being scattered around the world. I think it is one of the best ways that both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom incentivize exploration. I think it is so satisfying to, turn a corner, see a shrine, and then you've got kind of 15 minutes to spend doing a little puzzle. I think
it's a blessing shrine.
Unless it's a blessing shrine.
One out of 3 times it's a blessing shrine.
Yeah. Which, in the defense of most of the blessing shrines, they're related to an overworld puzzle, but there's a few that aren't for no reason.
Right?
Like there's
for
one
no reason.
There's one in the Gerudo Highlands that stands out in particular to me, or it stood out in particular when I played it for the first time. Kind of near Mount Agat, like right in the west of the map.
It's not even in a cave. I know what you're talking about.
It's just in a field.
Yeah, it's just like, what? And I spotted this from the sky. So what was the difficulty in reaching this? Like, this is a game where you can just teleport in the sky. So why? Like,
no, I didn't get that one. I thought it was a mistake or something. That was weird.
Yep.
But yeah. Oh, speaking of blessing shrines, what did you think of the one blessing shrine that tricks you?
Okay. I was so
where it moves away from you as you walk.
Yep. That was so cool that it really let me down when there was not a single one.
There was nothing else like it.
It was one and done. It's like, why don't tease us? I loved it though. I did love it, but I wish there was more like that. And it always got my hopes up with each blessing I found that I might get tricked or something. But nope. Sadly, it was just a one-time thing.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I do love mini dungeons scattered around the world, and I think that Tears of the Kingdoms, when compared to Breath of the Wild, I think they were a lot more creative in the way they designed shrines. I think some of them were really imaginative and really fun. I already said earlier in the podcast, the Zonai vehicle building ones I thought really stood out to me. I loved the ones where you go in and there's just a lake of lava and you have to cross that with a vehicle or something. I think that's brilliant. But again, we've already said it, that the problem is with Tears of the Kingdoms is that they can be broken so easily. And Breath of the Wilds are all quite robust. Obviously, you can break them, especially if you're good with like bomb jumps and things like that, which I'm not. But Tears of the Kingdom, it feels like the game is designed to allow you to break them. But because you can do things like lift a platform with Ultra Hand and then recall it and boost yourself up to places that you wouldn't be able to reach normally. Which does let you skip some really, really well-designed puzzles, which is a shame. And it's the same with the Fire Temple, like we said, that it forces you... It doesn't force you to interact with the levels that the developers have made, which is a problem. But in terms of shrines returning in a future game, I would like to see them again. I do like the shrine system, and I think it is a good way to fill the world with lots of classic, tiny little Zelda puzzles. But yeah, there's so many ways they could be improved. Like you said, theming them, even just theming them based on the area, the
environment you're in. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I really think that was something that I wanted them to remedy for Tears of the Kingdom if they brought shrines back, and unfortunately it was just a different coat of paint. It was just Zonai shrines rather than Sheikah. But yeah, I think I would like to see them return. Would you'd hate it if we get another open air game and shrines come back? Do you think that would be something?
If they theme it all around the same concept, whatever it is, whatever tribe they decide to,
it's another ancient civilization.
Right. Just it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
If they do that again, I'd be a bit upset, 100%. But if they do it in the sense again, like I said, with maybe how the caves got repetitive too. A lot of this game was repetitive. I would have preferred it like I said before with Twilight Princess. There again a handful of caves that all had their own kind of the one you'd find in North Hyrule near I believe
is that the one that's like Snow Peak
the ice
Mansion?
one.
Yeah.
It would be like an ice cave, and then you'd find a really dark one near the Kakariko Gorge or something, and then there was Lake Hylia one. You know,
the Lake Hylia cave. Yeah, that was huge, and it kept going. It seemed like there was no end to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if it was like that, if they give us 150, again, they don't have to be caves, but just like mini areas that had stuff like that, or just like grottos, bring those back, where you just go down a hole and find a little secret or something. I would have loved that as well.
A cow inexplicably down there.
Yeah, right. You just hear the cow mooing from from on the surface. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, something like that would have just given us more variety. I would appreciate way more. But yeah, no, having the shrines, having the same repetitive cutscene, having the same thing to go on again and again. It's just, it really fascinates me in the sense of like, does Nintendo really think they could just get away with doing like they did it with the sage cutscenes, the ancient sages repeated themselves. They in Breath of the Wild we already had the secret stones, each and every single one. In Breath of the Wild we had to deal with every Sheikah bestowing, but at least in that game every single monk had a different pose, so it's like there was a little variety, there was a little difference, but it's like you gave us no difference. It was the same Rauru and Sonya statue at the end of each one. You want us to watch every single one. And even if you can skip it, there's still 5 to 10 seconds you can't skip. You have to watch and see the thing. It's insane how Nintendo thinks it's okay to get that repetitive and people won't find it monotonous or annoying or anything like that, so
I do think definitely the Zonai theme gets very repetitive, and I think it is less interesting than the Sheikah theme for the shrines, especially like you said, the Sheikah monks are so much more interesting than just a statue. There's something very kind of unnerving about someone suspended in animation. I think that was much more interesting. One element that I do think Tears of the Kingdom's shrines really improved on Breath of the Wild's though was the combat shrines. I thought the shrines
the proving grounds
strip you of all your equipment.
The proving grounds
such an
are the best
improvement over the tests of strength, which once you've done one test of strength from each class, you've done them all. But each of the proving grounds was different. It forced you to think. Some of them are really quite difficult as well. Which is great. There's no real way to cheese them that easily because you don't have access to all your equipment. Exactly. I really thought they were a highlight, and 100%, I wish there were more of them.
I'm glad you mentioned them. I actually forgot. You're right. Easily my favorite shrines of the game. Every time I find one, it's funny because I'd see people complain about them. Those are the people who probably suck at the game and just want to cheese every shrine. But I would be like, finally, a nice little test, a nice little difference, something I could do. I agree. They are the equivalent of what made Eventide Island so special because it had that aspect. And that one you could actually cheese if you like throw your weapons before you walk to where you hear the monk's voice and have to deal with that. But I loved it. It's so balanced.
It's an example of restrictions making it more fun. The fact that you lose all your equipment and you're forced to scavenge items off the constructs in there or find item stashes hidden around the shrine is so much better than if you had all your equipment at the start. I wish they restricted the player more. Tears of the Kingdom prides itself on being the most open, the most epic adventure yet. Your Tears of the Kingdom Link is so much more powerful than any other Link we've played as, at least in terms of the sheer amount of abilities he has and things he can do, and the way he can manipulate the environment around him is like nothing else. And that's fantastic, especially for exploring its massive open world. But there are times when they really needed to restrict you more because the sheer amount of options you have means that you're not forced to answer the puzzles in the right way.
Yep.
So what did you think of the reward for all shrines in Tears of the Kingdom?
I feel like many should agree with me, but I don't know. I hated it. What about you?
I mean, I loved it for how weird it was, but it's very confusing and it doesn't look particularly good. If you're going to have the reward be the Ancient Heroes aspect transforms you into, we can presume, some bizarre ancient incarnation of Link. It's supposedly the one that was on the tapestry, the one that helped seal Calamity Ganon 10,000 years ago. That's fantastic. That's so cool. That's such a great reward. Why does he look like that?
Exactly.
He's like a kind of jackal dog lizard thing.
Right? It reminds me more, like, it doesn't look like any Zonai. It has more of a Anubis vibe. Like, I'm Egyptian and I hate it. You think I would appreciate it. No, I despise the way it looks. It looks really silly. It doesn't help that it doesn't even have animations like when Link consumes food. His mouth is just closed. The snub nose, nothing moves. So it's like Nintendo didn't even put effort in that regard. And it to me, I'm not lying, I legitimately feel like Nintendo purposely made it look bad so it could not force people who don't want to complete all shrines to feel like, oh, I gotta go out of my way to get this. It's like you look at it and you can overlook it. You could just be like
a Hestu's gift situation.
Exactly. That's what I deep down feel like. And to me, that's like such a huge insult to their most dedicated players, to the people who want to actually complete the games, because it's like there is no way that this is the best. You gave us such cool looking outfits. Almost every other outfit within the game looks better than that. There is nothing that looks as bad as that. So how is it that the final Shrine World, the hardest thing to get, the hardest outfit you can obtain within the game, is this hideous creature that doesn't even look like the Zonai that we've seen either? So what are we looking at?
It's very strange. And I know a lot of people have opinions on the Hero of the Wild outfit that you get as the reward for all shrines. See, I don't like the shorts.
I don't like the shorts and the sleeves.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan. It's not the best green tunic, but it's still a green tunic.
It's the worst green tunic, but I agree. At least it's a green tunic.
Exactly. As a completionist reward, you do 120 shrines. You unlock the green tunic. That just makes sense.
That is appreciated. Yeah, that I can get behind 100%. And you do it, and then you're like, oh, of course, that's a reward. Whereas in Tears of the Kingdom, you get the reward, you're
and
like, huh?
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, literally, you're just like, why? What is this exactly? And you learn from Impa that you're supposed to be the ancient hero on the tapestry, but it's like, bruh, that's him. Then I don't want to be him.
Because it feels like they're making some sort of statement there about the story, about the lore. They're saying something, because obviously it's a massive revelation that the hero 10,000 years ago wasn't a Hylian Link. It was whatever this creature is. And that's quite a cool twist if they explained it a little bit more than just oh, you're the hero from the tapestry. There's no explanation why he looks like that, what he is, what his history is. There's nothing. So it doesn't feel like a reward. It kind of feels just like a very confusing end to the game. I mean, a lot of people who don't go for all the Korok seeds or whatever, they'll play the
understandable.
Game. Of course, especially now there's more of them. But they'll play the game, they'll do the main story, they'll do all the dungeons, they'll beat Ganon, then they'll do all the shrines, and that's kind of where a lot of people who aren't full completionists but are still solidly into these games will stop playing. And then it's just a very weird ending for the final thing they do, the final item they unlock, to be this really strange reward. And I mean, like you said, it is completely optional. It's something for people who've completed everything, but it could have been anything else other than that. It's a very, very strange choice to go for that.
And it's just crazy because it adds on to all the other rewards that also feel like crap, like you mentioned, the Korok seed, but we understand that Nintendo never intended for the player to collect them all. It's meant to be is wherever you go throughout Hyrule, you're gonna find some. So every player will get the amount they end up needing.
Exactly.
So that's okay, sure, that makes sense. But then you have the depths, which is like, okay, so I got every
yeah.
light route. That's supposed to be a reward of its own, right? And then you get nothing. You literally get nothing. It's an inventory item you can't do anything with.
You don't even have to go anywhere to get it. You get the last light route and suddenly, like,
it just gives it to you. Yep.
You get...
And it's not even like you glow, or I think it's called the...
dispelling light root medal, dispelling darkness medal, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And it doesn't dispel any darkness. Like, I thought maybe I could have equipped it, and then all of a sudden the depths would glow much brighter and something, and that would have been the perfect reward, and I would have appreciated it. Because imagine, again, I understand it would take away the feeling and vibe you get from the depths, but by the time you could explore and get every light route,
when
you're done exploring it.
Exactly. You know? Yeah.
Exactly. So then turn on the lights. Like, let's see how it looks. It doesn't have to be as bright as the surface, but just make it brighter, because it still is really dark. And when you stray away from a light route, it's not. You don't really feel like you lit them all up. It feels just as dark as when you were exploring it initially. And so then you get a horrible reward, but then you tell yourself, oh well, maybe because it's for a bigger reward. It's for all the shrines. This will help me locate all the shrines easier. And then you get that, and it's just like, really, Nintendo? Yeah, it's such a shame. And again, people say it's about the journey, not destination, but it's like, come on, the destination has to be a little worth it too. We can't just use that as an excuse for Nintendo to give us something that's not really worthwhile. Like, I can't get behind that. I feel like we deserved something better, and no Zelda game has ever kind of slapped the player in the face with such mediocre rewards like this. Like, we accepted the Korok seeds, we understood that, but like, I can't get behind the shrine reward being something like that. And I do know that some people are going to argue, well, I like it, I think it looks good. Okay, but for the majority of Zelda fans, or for someone who understands Nintendo's aesthetic, Nintendo's way of developing things, Nintendo's art style, Nintendo's style for the game, this is nothing that they've ever given us before. We've never had this dog-looking creature before, so why now?
Yep.
Why all of a sudden now? How is this a reward to Zelda fans? It makes no sense.
Exactly, and because it's at the very end of the game, it just leaves you with an odd feeling after you've spent all this time grinding out all the shrines. It's different now. We know that that's the final reward, but especially, the first time we played this game, it's like, I wonder what the reward is for all the shrines, because we know it was something as iconic as the green tunic in Breath of the Wild,
right? To be let down.
Now you're a dog.
Exactly. And the game designers could have done something 20 times better. They've proven it hundreds of times. So, for real, it's just baffling, honestly.
Yeah. But anyway, we've discussed Tears of the Kingdom now for a couple of hours, and we originally intended to have a little bit more structure to this episode, but once you get two Zelda YouTubers talking about Tears of the Kingdom, it's kind of just turns into gushing about the game, and I don't know how you feel, Luke, about this, but it kind of felt like we were bashing the game, or like we're haters or whatever.
Yeah,
but
not at all.
Like we said earlier, it's because we love these games, and we love this game, and we love this series, that we can be critical about it when there are things that we don't like, or we would have done differently.
Exactly, yeah. And it's more so like what we expect from Nintendo, what we expect from the series, and in general, I think you could agree with me when I say this is one of literally the best games ever. Still, it's an amazing game. It's
absolutely unbelievable. Yeah.
I don't think it's wrong to want more from something you love. So like, at 100%, this is still up there as one of my favorite games. It's, even though it may seem like we were bashing on it, it's again, tough love. That's the best way I could describe it.
Comes from the heart, exactly. And And, there's so much to say about this game. This game is absolutely gigantic. It feels, although we've talked for 2 hours now, it feels like we've barely scratched the surface. So
100%.
So I think this won't be the last time that we discuss Tears of the Kingdom. I think we'll come back, very soon for another round of discussing this game, what we like, what we don't like.
So if there are certain topics you think we didn't mention, don't worry, we're gonna cover them, just in due time, because there's already a lot. We haven't even talked about the final boss. We haven't talked about other aspects of there's just so much that it's hard to break down in just one sitting. So expect it in several segments, I guess.
Yeah, but yeah, we hope you enjoyed this rambling about Tears of the Kingdom. You know, as Luke said, if you want us to cover anything in particular, feel free to leave it in the comments. Let us know your opinions as well on this game, because it's such a divisive game. You know, so many people love so much about this, but then there are so many things that people aren't as keen on. And we're really interested to know what you like and what you don't like about this game. I think it'd be great to get a discussion going, especially now it's been about 6 months after launch. We don't have to worry about spoilers. Most people who will play this game have already played it now. So yeah, you know, just let us know what you think about this game that we've been talking about and speculating on for so many years. Yeah, it feels crazy that it's out now, and it's been out for 6 months, and we're breaking it down in this way.
Yeah, it doesn't even feel like it's been half a year. Like that's insane.
It's scary. It's scary, man. But yeah, you know, if you're listening on YouTube, leave a like if you enjoyed it. And yeah, we'll see you for more Tears of the Kingdom discussion soon.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody, for this episode of the Zeldudes Podcast. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Cheers.